Christmas Eve, 1858. In the shadow of a North Carolina tobacco empire, a mother's scream pierced the frostbitten night. A child ripped from her arms for 30 pieces of silver. By dawn, hellfire consumed everything, as if God himself struck the match. Was it rage, or divine wrath? You won't believe what unearthed records reveal. In the dim, frost-laced dawn of Christmas morning, 1858, the Harrove estate sprawled like a slumbering beast across the rolling Piedmont hills of Randolph County, North Carolina. The air hung heavy with the acrid tang of cured tobacco leaves, mingling with the sharp bite of winter pine. Fog clung to the ground like a shroud, muting the world in ghostly whites and grays, as if the earth itself mourned what was to come. The estate's iron gates, forged in the fires of a blacksmith's forge years ago, stood sentinel at the entrance, their twisted bars etched with rust that looked like dried blood under the pale light. Beyond them, the main house loomed, a two-story edifice of weathered brick and small, shuttered windows that stared out like unblinking eyes, guarding secrets buried deep in its foundations. This was no ordinary plantation. It was a kingdom built on the backs of the damned, where the soil was fertilized not just with manure but with the sweat and tears of generations chained to its rhythms. Established in 1791 by Colonel William Hargrove, a Revolutionary War veteran whose heroism was rewarded with blood-soaked land grants, the estate had grown into a monument to human greed. The colonel, a man of iron will and colder heart, had planted his first tobacco seeds with the precision of a general plotting battle lines. Those seeds, smuggled from Virginia's fertile valleys, took root in soil tilled by enslaved hands that bled from thorns and blistered under the relentless sun. By 1858, under his grandson Edmund Hargrove's stewardship, the 400 acres pulsed with mechanical efficiency. 3 cavernous tobacco barns where leaves hung like withered corpses in the smoky gloom, a main house with 12 rooms echoing with the ghosts of forced labor, detached kitchens where the clang of iron pots masked cries of exhaustion, stables reeking of hay and horse sweat, a smokehouse perfumed with hickory and curing meats, a blacksmith's forge where hammers rang out like judgment bells, and workshops where carpenters shaped wood into tools of oppression. The enslaved quarters huddled to the south, a grim row of 12 cabins fashioned from rough-hewn logs, their chinks stuffed with mud and rags against the winter's bite. Dirt floors, single windows admitting slivers of light, fireplaces that spat sparks like angry spirits. These were homes only in name, prisons etched with the faint carvings of names and prayers scratched into the walls by those who dared dream of freedom. Here, 43 souls toiled under the whip's shadow, producing 20,000 pounds of tobacco annually, shipped to Richmond's bustling ports and across the Atlantic to feed Europe's insatiable vice. Each leaf harvested was a testament to stolen lives, a currency in sin that lined pockets while eroding souls. Edmund Hargrove, at 34, embodied the plantation's soulless arithmetic. Educated in the hallowed halls of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he studied law but learned only the art of exploitation, he returned not as a liberator but as a ledger keeper. Tall and gaunt, with sharp features framed by a neatly trimmed beard the color of faded ink, his eyes were steel gray, reflecting the cold calculus of profit. He dressed in fine wool coats tailored in Charleston, but his hands bore no calluses, those were reserved for the enslaved. His wife, Caroline, 28 and fragile as porcelain, drifted through the upstairs rooms like a specter, her pale skin shielded from the sun by wide-brimmed hats and gloves, even in the chill of December. Childbirth had ravaged her nerves. After their second son, she retreated into novels and letters, her laughter a rare, hollow echo in the halls. Their boys, William, 7, and James, 5, roamed under the watchful eye of Bess, an enslaved woman in her 60s, her gray hair twisted into a bun like coiled wisdom, her stooped frame belying a mind sharp as a hidden blade. Bess had nursed Edmund himself, her milk sustaining the very bloodline that bound her. She slept in a cramped alcove off the kitchen, ears attuned to the night's whispers, her dreams haunted by the chains she could never break. The estate's layout was a deliberate map of control. East, the vast tobacco fields undulated like a sea of green gold in summer, now barren and frost-crusted, their furrows like scars on the land. West, vegetable gardens and orchards where enslaved women plucked roots and fruits under watchful overseer eyes. North, the barns and workshops buzzed with the din of labor. South, the quarters, separated by a wide dirt road that served as a symbolic chasm between master and slave. Edmund ruled with detached cruelty, not the sadistic glee of some planters, but a biblical indifference, like Pharaoh ignoring the plagues until they consumed him. He delegated whippings to Cyrus Dalton, the overseer, a burly man with a scarred face and a bullwhip coiled at his belt like a serpent ready to strike. Food was rationed: cornmeal, salt pork, molasses, enough to sustain but not to thrive.
Clothing was coarse homespun, patched until threadbare.
Small gardens behind cabins offered an illusion of autonomy, but every extra seed came at a price deducted from invisible wages. Christmas Day was granted as respite, a cruel mockery of the Nativity, where the enslaved celebrated with scraps, while the main house feasted on roasted turkey and pies baked by hands that bled. Yet beneath this veneer of order simmered a spiritual undercurrent, a divine tension woven into the fabric of existence. The Bible, smuggled and read in secret huddles by firelight, spoke of Exodus and Jubilee, of a God who parted seas for the oppressed. Whispers in the quarters invoked psalms of vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Guilt shadowed the masters like a persistent fog. Edmund's ledgers, locked in his study, were more than records, they were confessions of sin, tallying human souls as commodities. Caroline's nervous frailty hinted at a conscience pricked, her prayers in the night perhaps pleading for absolution from the wealth built on broken families. The land itself seemed cursed, crops failing in cycles that some called divine retribution for the original sin of slavery, echoing the biblical famines that humbled empires. Into this world was born Ruth, in the spring of 1834, under a sky streaked with dawn's first light, in a cabin where the air smelled of earth and newborn hope. Her mother, Dinah, the scripts Dinah, perhaps a transcription error, but will honor the essence, had been dragged to Harrove in the 1820s from Fayetteville's auction blocks, her chains clanking like accusatory bells.
Dinah's kitchen domain in the main house was a realm of alchemy, flour-dusted hands kneading dough into golden loaves, pots simmering with stews that masked the bitterness of bondage.
Her pastries, light as redemption's promise, were Caroline's crutch during pregnancies, ironic sustenance from the oppressed to the oppressor. Ruth, with her mother's deep, soulful eyes that held the weight of ancestral rivers, and quick, deft hands, grew up amid the clatter of utensils and the hush of stolen lessons. She learned to read by peering over the Hargrove children's shoulders, deciphering letters like forbidden runes that unlocked worlds beyond the fields. Cooking became her sacrament, stirring pots as if brewing elixirs of survival, the steam rising like prayers to a distant god. Tragedy struck like a thief in the night when Ruth was 11. Dinah succumbed to a raging fever, typhoid, the white doctor muttered dismissively, his examination cursory, as if her life were a footnote. Buried in the unmarked cemetery behind the quarters, a patch of overgrown earth dotted with crude crosses, Dinah's grave became a silent altar where Ruth whispered vows of remembrance. Orphaned in spirit, Ruth was banished to the fields, her young body bent to tasks that aged her prematurely, hauling water in buckets that bit into her shoulders, yanking weeds that tore her skin, gathering leaves whose sap stained her like indelible sin. By 14, she toiled full days, the sun a merciless judge overhead, her back aching like the weight of generational curses. The tobacco plants, with their broad leaves and sticky resin, seemed alive, whispering temptations of escape or revenge, their roots delving deep into soil soaked with blood. Then came Samuel, a beacon in the darkness, arriving in 1850 from Virginia's plantations, sold south like chattel in a deal sealed with indifferent ink. Tall, broad-shouldered, with skin the color of polished walnut and a quiet strength that commanded respect without words, he worked the barns, hanging leaves in the suffocating heat, his muscles rippling like coiled justice. Their meeting by the creek, a ribbon of silver winding through the estate's eastern edge, was Providence. Ruth, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair bound in a faded cloth, scrubbed clothes against rocks, the waters murmur a lullaby of forgotten freedoms. Samuel, bucket in hand, paused, his voice low and warm breaking the silence. The water runs free here, don't it? Her smile, tentative yet radiant, sparked a flame that no overseer could extinguish. Their union in spring 1852 was a defiant act of love in a world designed to crush it. No courthouse papers, no white preacher's blessing, just a gathering in the quarters under the stars, where Jacob, an elder with a voice like thunder from his pre-slavery pulpit days, invoked biblical vows, "What God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." A pilfered chicken roasted over flames, cornbread crumbly and sweet, greens simmered with hidden spices, and a fiddle's mournful tune danced through the night. Samuel moved into Ruth's cabin, transforming the dirt-floored space into a sanctuary, a plank bed with straw mattress, rough-hewn table, stools worn smooth by weary bodies, fireplace crackling like a heartbeat. Evenings unfolded in rhythmic intimacy. Samuel carving wood into spoons, bowls, whimsical toys, his knife flashing in firelight, Ruth mending fabrics or weaving rugs from scraps, her fingers nimble as fate's threads. Sundays by the creek, they spoke of dreams, the water reflecting their faces like mirrors to free yourselves, the setting sun painting the fields in blood-red hues foreshadowing turmoil.
Lily's birth in March 1857 shattered and rebuilt their world.
On a storm-lashed night, rain drumming the roof like impatient spirits, Ruth labored in agony, Samuel at her side, his strong hands at anchor amid the waves of pain. When Lily emerged, tiny and fierce, her cries piercing the thunder, Samuel swaddled her in a threadbare blanket, placing her in Ruth's arms. Those dark eyes, mirroring Ruth's, blinked with innocent wonder, igniting a maternal fire fierce, biblical in its protectiveness, like the she-bear robbed of her cubs in Proverbs. Named for the wild lilies by the creek, symbols of purity amid filth, Lily thrived. At 6 months, her laughter bubbled like springs of joy. At 1 year, she toddled, grasping table edges with chubby fists. Ruth slung her in cloth while working fields, shading her under trees where breezes whispered lullabies.
Evenings, Ruth sang ancestral songs, melodies of rivers crossing to Canaan, roads to Zion, her voice a velvet thread binding past to future.
Samuel, doting father, crafted wooden menageries, horses galloping in imagination, birds soaring beyond chains, rabbits hopping toward hidden burrows. His stories, murmured softly, painted vistas of liberty, endless prairies where winds carried no whips, skies unmarred by auction blocks, lands where families bloomed unbroken. In that cabin, amid oppression's crush, flickered a fragile Eden, a testament to resilience, a spiritual defiance against the serpent of slavery.
But shadows lengthened.
The 1857 crop failed catastrophically. April's frost nipped seedlings like divine warning, summer's drought withered stalks to brittle husks.
Harvest yielded half projections, leaves crumbling like false promises. Edmund's ledgers bled red ink, debts to Greensboro merchants mounted like gathering storms. Selling land?
Prices plummeted post-1857 panic, estates crumbling like Babel's Tower.
Loans? Banks shunned planters, scenting ruin. Enter Josiah Trent, November's harbinger of doom, a Richmond slave trader, his circuit a trail of shattered families.
Portly, bearded, eyes glacial as Arctic wastes, he arrived in finery, wool coat gleaming, boots polished, gold chain dangling like Judas's silver. His ledger priced humans like cattle, men at $800 for cotton fields south, women lower and less fancy, children as investments in future servitude. In Edmund's study, amid shelves of leather-bound sins, they bargained over brandy-scented air.
Trent-eyed young field hands, Edmund haggled, reluctant to part with prime labor. Agreement, 3 men, $800 each. Still short. Trent's gaze sharpened, children? Light-skinned fetch premium in Richmond, house servants, trainable young.
Edmund's hesitation, a crack in his armor, betrayed inner turmoil, perhaps a whisper of conscience, a fear of eternal ledger unbalanced. Lily, he uttered, finger tracing the name, born 57, daughter of Ruth and Samuel.
Trent nodded, deal sealed in bloodless ink. 4 souls, 3 men, 1 child.
Ruth's world poised to shatter. Christmas Day dawned cruelly serene, frost glazing the ground like deceptive peace. No field work, a gift mocking Christ's birth, where masters feasted while slaves scraped meager joys. Ruth awoke to Lily's teething whimpers, the child feverish, fretful. Rocking her by the fire's glow, embers casting dancing shadows like restless spirits, Ruth hummed Dinah's river song, a melody of Exodus, promising shores where no child was commodity. Samuel, summoned pre-dawn to the main house for furniture shifting ahead of Edmund's gathering, promised midday return, his kiss lingering like foreboding.
At 10 a.m., the knock thudded like judgment's gavel. Ruth's heart seized, knocks on holy days heralded hell.
Opening the door, chill wind whipping her skirts, she faced Edmund and Trent, masters of fate, their breaths fogging the air like exhaled sins.
Edmund's gaze averted, inspecting the cabin as if appraising more property.
The child's sold, he intoned, voice flat as a gravestone.
Trent takes her to Richmond this afternoon.
Lily squirmed, whimpering, Ruth's arms tightened like iron bands forged in maternal fire.
No, she breathed, a denial echoing Eve's lament in the garden's fall. Edmund met her eyes then, unyielding, it's done.
The world tilted, colors bleeding to gray. Ruth's mind raced through biblical echoes, Rachel weeping for her children, refused comfort, Pharaoh's decree drowning innocence, Herod's slaughter under Bethlehem's star. This Christmas celebration unveiled slavery's greatest cruelty, not chains on wrists, but shackles on hearts, severing mother from child for prophet's altar. Trent stepped forward, his hand outstretched like the betrayer's grasp, but Ruth recoiled, Lily's cries swelling like a chorus of angels heralding apocalypse.
The air thickened with unspoken prophecy. This transaction, paid in silver, would ignite flames of retribution.
Whispers among the quarters already stirred, divine justice brewing, a fire to purge the wicked, melting iron gates as if hell itself rebelled. As Trent wrenched Lily away, her tiny hands clutching air, Ruth's scream rent the morning, a primal wail that shattered the fog, echoing across fields like thunder from Sinai.
Samuel, returning, found chaos. Ruth collapsed, eyes vacant as jobs after loss.
The estate's festivities proceeded oblivious, Caroline's table laden with feasts prepared by Bess, laughter ringing hollow and rooms built on tears.
But in the quarters, grief fermented into fury. That night, as stars wheeled overhead like witnesses, a spark kindled.
Faulty lanterns, the inquiry claimed. But survivors knew Ruth, vessel of wrath, had struck the match. Flames leaped from barns to house, roaring like the furnaces of Gehenna, consuming tobacco, ledgers, dreams.
Iron gates melted, twisted into grotesque shapes, symbols of broken bonds, divine smiting. The fire's legacy haunts, ashes sifted revealed bones, but whose? Courthouse records buried truths, family archives sealed like tombs. Yet spiritual echoes persist, guilt's inheritance, redemption's elusive grace.
In Ruth's story, we glimpse slavery's abyss, a system where Christmas birthed not joy, but inferno, where sin's debt demanded fiery payment.
What divine hand guided that blaze?
Ponder as embers fade, in the ledger of eternity, no prophet erases such cruelty. The papers were signed, sealed in ink that might as well have been blood, binding a child's fate to the cold machinery of commerce. Ruth's world fractured in that instant, the cabin's dim light flickering like a candle in a storm, casting long shadows across the dirt floor scarred by years of weary footsteps. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke from the dying fire and the faint, lingering aroma of cornbread baked the night before, a meager Christmas indulgence traded for scraps. She shook her head slowly, her dark curls matted with sweat despite the winter chill seeping through the cabin's cracks, her eyes wide with a desperation that clawed at the soul. "Please," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread, fraying under the weight of impending loss.
"Please. She's just a baby. Not even 2 years old." The words hung in the frost-laced air, a plea to deaf ears, echoing the biblical cries of the oppressed. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted, as if the scriptures themselves wept through her.
Josiah Trent, the trader, loomed like a biblical giant, his broad shoulders straining against a wool coat heavy with the dust of countless roads traveled in pursuit of profit from human flesh. His face, weathered and impassive as carved stone, betrayed no flicker of humanity, no remorse in his cold, slate-gray eyes that had witnessed too many such scenes to count. He stepped forward, his boots thudding heavily on the packed earth, the sound reverberating like the toll of a judgment bell. "Make it easy on yourself," he growled, his voice gravelly from years of barked commands at auction blocks, laced with a false paternalism that masked his greed.
"Hand her over."
Ruth recoiled, backing toward the far wall where shadows pooled like spilled ink, her arms tightening around Lily as if she could fuse their bodies into one unbreakable whole. The baby's soft warmth pressed against her chest. Tiny heart fluttering like a trapped bird, her whimpers rising in pitch, sensing the terror that gripped her mother. "Please," Ruth begged again, her tone rising, infused with a raw, maternal ferocity that hearkened to the lioness defending her cub in the wilds of Proverbs.
"Please don't do this."
Trent's response was a calculated cruelty, his words dripping with the poison of justification, the same lies peddled to soothe the consciences of buyers and sellers alike. "She'll fetch a good price in Richmond," he said matter-of-factly, as if discussing livestock at market, his breath visible in the cold like exhaled sins.
"Light-skinned children always do. Someone will raise her in a house, teach her to sew or cook.
She'll have a better life than she'd have here, away from the fields, the whips." But Ruth's gaze hardened, her dark eyes, mirrors of her mother's resilient spirit, boring into him with unspoken accusation. "She's my daughter," she countered, her voice steadying, laced with a divine claim that transcended earthly ownership, invoking the sacred bond of creation, as if God himself had knit them together in the womb. Edmund Hargrove, standing sentinel in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the gray morning light filtering through the frost-rimed window, interjected with the finality of a pharaoh's decree. His voice was arctic, devoid of warmth, echoing the cold efficiency that defined his rule. "She's my property," he stated flatly, his polished boots gleaming incongruously against the cabin's squalor, his expensive coat tailored from fine English wool, buttons glinting like ill-gotten treasures.
and I need the money."
The words landed like a lash, stripping away illusions, revealing the core sin of the system: humans reduced to ledger entries, souls bartered for silver. Ruth's eyes locked onto him then, truly seeing the man, not just the master, but the embodiment of greed's corruption. She took in his clean, manicured hands that had never bled from tobacco. Sap, the gold watch chain dangling from his vest like a noose of vanity, his face, smooth and unlined by labor, etched only with the faint lines of calculation, utterly barren of guilt or hesitation. In that moment, she saw the spiritual void, the absence of divine light, as if his heart were the barren ground where no seed of mercy could take root. "You're selling my baby on Christmas," she said, her voice trembling now, not with fear but with a rising storm of indignation. The word Christmas spat like an indictment against the hypocrisy of a holiday celebrating a child's holy birth while profaning another's. The irony hung heavy, a spiritual dissonance that resonated with the Nativity's inversion. Here, no wise men bearing gifts, only traitors stealing innocence. Hargrove offered no reply, his silence a damning confession, his expression as unmoved as the stone idols condemned in Scripture. What unfolded next was a blur of violence, a chaotic maelstrom compressed into less than a minute, yet etched eternally in the annals of suffering. Trent lunged with predatory speed, crossing the cramped space in 2 powerful strides, his large hands, calloused from handling chains, seizing Lily with ruthless precision, a motion honed by countless repetitions on dusty auction platforms. He pried her from Ruth's grasp, the baby's blanket tangling briefly, her tiny limbs flailing in confusion. Lily's scream erupted, a high-pitched wail that sliced through the morning hush like a prophet's cry, piercing the fog-shrouded fields and echoing into the quarters where other enslaved souls stirred uneasily. Ruth surged forward instinctively, her nails raking the air, desperate to reclaim her child, but Hargrove intercepted, his grip iron on her arm, twisting it behind her back with a force that drove her to her knees on the cold dirt. She fought wildly, clawing at his sleeves, kicking up dust that swirled like chaotic spirits, her screams mingling with Lily's in a harrowing duet of despair. But strength favored the oppressor. Hargrove held firm, his face inches from hers, his breath hot and indifferent. Trent was already out the door, Lily's cries fading into the distance as he strode toward his wagon, the child's wails carried on the wind like a lamentation psalm. Ruth's final scream tore from her depths, a guttural, soul-rending howl that seemed to shake the cabin's timbers, raw and primal, echoing the anguish of Hagar cast out into the wilderness. Her voice cracked, throat ablaze, until exhaustion claimed her. Hargrove released his hold, stepping back as if from something unclean, his eyes appraising her collapse with detached curiosity. She crumpled to the floor, body convulsing with sobs that racked her frame, tears soaking the earth like offerings to a forsaken god. He loomed over her momentarily, his shadow engulfing her like sin's eclipse. "You'll get over it," he uttered coldly, as if her grief were a temporary inconvenience, comparable to a broken tool or a poor harvest. Then he turned on his heel, the door creaking shut behind him with finality, leaving Ruth in a void of silence broken only by her ragged breaths. She remained there for hours, curled on the floor amid the faint scents of straw and smoke, her mind a whirlwind of fragmented memories, Lily's first smile, like dawn breaking, her giggles at Samuel's wooden toys, the warmth of her breath against Ruth's neck during feverish nights. The sounds of departure filtered in, the creak of wagon wheels grinding over frozen ruts, the jingle of harnesses like mocking bells, horses' hooves thudding away into oblivion. Then, nothing. By noon, Trent's wagon vanished northward, Lily bundled in the back amid chains and despair, her cries muffled by distance, the 3 sold men, strong backs destined for deeper South's cotton hells, sitting in stoic silence, their faces masks of resigned fate, eyes hollow with the knowledge that families were illusions in this world. Samuel returned to find her thus. His broad frame filling the doorway, the winter light haloing him like a reluctant saint. He said nothing, words inadequate against such abyss. Instead, he knelt beside her, enveloping her in his arms, his quiet strength a bulwark against the crumbling world. She wept into his chest, the fabric of his shirt absorbing her tears like parched earth drinking rain, until the well ran dry. In grief's wake, something forged anew within her, a cold, unyielding resolve, hard as flint, unbreakable as the covenant stones of old. It was the spark of divine retribution, the biblical fire that consumes the wicked, kindled in her soul. As twilight descended, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds, the temperature plummeted, frost crystals forming on the grass like nature's judgment etched in ice. Ruth rose at last, her movements deliberate, infused with a purposeful calm that belied the inferno raging inside. She stepped out of the cabin, the cold air biting her skin like accusatory fingers, crossing the quarters where whispers hushed at her approach, eyes following her with a mix of pity and awe, sensing the storm she carried. Samuel moved to follow, his concern etched in furrowed brow, but she halted him with a glance. "Don't follow me," she murmured, her voice low and resonant, carrying an authority that rooted him in place, as if she were a prophetess on a sacred mission. She bypassed the main house's front, veering instead to the kitchen building, a detached sanctuary of stone and timber, linked by a covered walkway that creaked underfoot like weary bones. The hearth fire glowed eternally, embers pulsing like a living heart, maintained through winter's grip for dawn's ease. Ruth paused in the doorway, the heat washing over her in waves, mingling with the aromas of herbs and baked earth, evoking ghosts of the past. She thought of Dinah, her mother, who had toiled here for 2 decades, her hands transforming flour and fire into sustenance for those who deemed her disposable. Memories flooded, Dinah's songs hummed over simmering pots, lessons in resilience whispered amid the clatter of utensils. Then, Lily, her bright eyes sparkling like stars in the firmament, her laughter a melody purer than any hymn, her tiny fingers grasping at air as Trent bore her away, a theft echoing the slaughter of innocence under Herod's blade. And Hargrove, his ledger-bound soul, eyes devoid of light, uttering dismissals as if her agony were ledger dust. The gold chain, symbol of Mammon's idolatry, flashed in her mind's eye. She reached into the hearth, grasping a burning log, flames licking her palms, searing flesh and a baptism of pain she embraced as purification. Blisters rose immediately, but she held firm, the heat a tangible manifestation of her inner blaze, carrying it through the walkway like a torchbearer in a divine procession. Into the main house she strode, the log's glow illuminating corridors lined with portraits of Hargrove ancestors, stern faces judging from gilded frames, their legacies built on stolen lives. First, the study, Hargrove's sanctum of sin, where ledgers sprawled like open tombs, pages filled with names tallied as assets. She placed the log atop the open book, flames leaping hungrily, devouring ink and paper in a purifying conflagration. Names, souls, curled into ash, a symbolic erasure of bondage's records, as if fulfilling the jubilee where debts are forgiven and captives freed. She watched briefly, the crackle of burning pages a symphony of justice, smoke curling like ascending prayers. Then, the parlor, Caroline's domain of imported luxuries, velvet curtains, Persian rugs, mahogany furniture polished to a sheen by enslaved hands. Ruth ignited the drapes, flames racing upward like avenging angels, fabric shriveling in acrid bursts. The dining room followed, silverware glinting mockingly before heat warped them, the sitting room, where idle conversations masked underlying cruelties, the hallway, portraits blistering and peeling. By the front door's threshold, the first floor roared with inferno, heat waves distorting air like mirages of hell. She emerged into the night, standing in the yard as flames illuminated her face in flickering orange, the cold air a stark contrast to the blaze's fury. Shouts erupted, overseers bark, enslaved feet pounding earth, screams piercing the dark. But Ruth stood unmoved, a pillar of salt in this modern Sodom, her blistered hands throbbing like stigmata, blood seeping through bandages improvised from rags. The fire raged for hours, a voracious beast consuming not just timber and brick, but the facade of civility erected on suffering's foundation. Neighbors, drawn by the horizon's glow visible across the Piedmont's expanse, arrived to a scene of apocalypse, flames towering 30 feet, heat repelling like divine barrier, forcing bucket lines into futile gestures, water hissing into steam, evaporating against the blaze's might. The Hargroves escaped via a second-floor window on the east side, Caroline leaping first, her frail form crumpling on impact, ankle snapping with a crack audible over the roar, pain etching her face in agony's lines. The boys were lowered by their father, caught by Bess whose aged arms trembled but held, her loyalty a complex tapestry of survival and subtle subversion. Hargrove descended last, nightshirt singed, face soot-streaked like a marked cane, coughing smoke that burned his lungs as retribution's breath. They huddled in blankets from the quarters, witnessing their empires fall, William sobbing, tears carving clean paths through grime, James staring transfixed, eyes reflecting the flames like mirrors to inner voids, Caroline in shock, her limp a permanent scar, sweat beading despite frost. Enslaved folk rushed forth, some to bucket lines an obligatory show, others salvaging from outbuildings, the smokehouse's meats spared, stables horses led to safety amid whinnies of panic. The kitchen ignited around midnight, walkway. Ting his fuse, flames claiming it holy, a tobacco barn caught errant sparks, its dried leaves fueling a secondary pyre, aromas of burning wealth choking the air. By December 26th's dawn, the house lay in smoldering ruin, walls imploded, chimney a blackened sentinel cracked like a broken covenant.
Iron gates warped, scrollwork melted into grotesque forms, symbols of twisted justice. Ruth sat amid ashes, dress charred, hands raw and weeping, expression serene as one who had fulfilled a prophetic call. Dalton seized her roughly, her lack of resistance unnerving, as if she had transcended earthly bonds. Samuel lunged, only to be repelled. Their eyes met once, hers dry, conveying unspoken farewell, a depth of sorrow and resolve that pierced him like a spear. Locked in the barn, amid hay's musty scent and shadows, the inquiry commenced 2 days hence. Sheriff Thomas Garrett, portly and officious, ledger in hand, interrogated under gray skies heavy with unshed rain. Hargrove's tale, awakened by smoke and screams, heroic evacuation, blaming a kitchen lantern or hearth spark. Pressed, he conceded Ruth's proximity, revealing the incident: child sold, mother distraught. Upset enough to arson? Garrett probed. Hargrove evaded, but suspicion coalesced. Ruth's interview in the barn's gloom, bandaged hands from Bess's mercy, she sat vacant-eyed. Did you set it? No reply. Confess for leniency. Her gaze met his, empty yet profound. What will you do? Hang me? Garrett fidgeted, invoking the judge. Then words matter not, she said hoarsely, her silence a testament to faith in higher justice. Inquiry closed inconclusive, no direct proof, only shadows of motive. Hargrove eschewed trial, fearing exposure, debts unveiled, Christmas sales scrutinized, ledger's sins publicized. Instead, quiet disposal. Ruth sold to Marcus Finch, Charleston's broker in difficult cases, for $150, a paltry sum underscoring her devaluation. Late January's chill saw her departure, wagon rumbling away, no goodbyes, no backward glances, face stoic as she ascended into unknown exile. Samuel watched, fists clenched, jaw set, burying Lily's wooden rabbit under floorboards, a relic of lost innocence, soil covering it like a grave. The estate's aftermath, rebuilds on borrowed coin, crops fickle, new house austere, fire precautions obsessive, locks, shutters, buckets, bell, rifle bedside. Hargrove's sleep fractured by nightmares of flames. Caroline's terror deepened, her limp a hobbling reminder, phobia bordering mania, flinching at every spark, her soul scarred by the fire's divine echo. In this saga, spiritual threads weave, betrayal's silver echoing Judas, fire as purifying judgment, like Sodom's rain, Ruth as instrument of retribution, her act a cry for jubilee. The plantation's curse lingered, a haunting legacy of sin unpaid, whispering of redemption's distant dawn. The fire's embers had cooled, but its scars etched deep into the souls and soil of the Hargrove estate, a lingering testament to the biblical truth that the sins of the fathers visit upon the children, generation after cursed generation. In the years following that fateful Christmas of 1858, the plantation became a shadowed relic, its once manicured fields surrendering to weeds that choked the tobacco rows like unrepented guilt strangling prosperity. The air hung heavier now, infused with an intangible weight, a spiritual malaise that whispered of divine displeasure, as if the land itself bore the mark of Cain, cursed to wander unfruitful. Frosty mornings revealed dew-kissed ruins where the main house had stood, charred timbers jutting like accusatory fingers toward the heavens, the iron gates twisted into grotesque shapes that evoked melted idols toppled in Old Testament fury. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of appall over the property, a sense that God's eye lingered judgmentally, withholding blessings from ground soaked in the tears of the oppressed. Caroline Hargrove, once the delicate southern belle with porcelain skin and nervous grace, unraveled like a frayed tapestry under the fire's psychological blaze. Her broken ankle healed crookedly, leaving a permanent limp that echoed through the rebuilt house like a rhythmic reminder of loss, a hobble that symbolized the family's fractured foundation. But the physical wound paled against the inferno in her mind. She developed a terror of flames that bordered on holy dread, as if every spark invoked the apocalyptic visions of Revelation. Candles were banished from the household, deemed vessels of temptation, only oil lamps were permitted, and even then, confined to occupied rooms, their wicks trimmed short to minimize risk. She forbade the boys from nearing the hearth. Her voice sharp with panic, envisioning their innocent play igniting another cataclysm. Nightmares plagued her, wrenching her from sleep with screams that pierced the silence. "I smell smoke," she'd cry, clutching at sheets damp with sweat, her eyes wild in the moonlight filtering through barred windows. By 1861, she withdrew entirely, a recluse in the upstairs bedroom, its walls papered in faded florals that mocked her wilted spirit.
She pored over the same novels repeatedly, tales of romance and redemption that contrasted cruelly with her reality, scribbling unsent letters to her Charleston sisters, pleas for understanding that gathered dust on her desk. Conversations with Edmund dwindled to terse inquiries about door locks or water buckets, her tone laced with accusation, as if he were the arsonist who had torched her peace. The boys, William and James, grew in the fire's long shadow, their childhoods warped like the estate's gates. William, the elder at 7 during the blaze, turned inward, his once playful demeanor replaced by a solemn quietude that isolated him like a monk in penance. Nights found him bolt upright, tears streaming, murmuring of dreams where flames danced mockingly, consuming everything he loved, a subconscious echo of Job's trials, losing all in a divine test. James, the younger, developed a stutter that clung stubbornly, his words halting like footsteps on uncertain ground, each hesitation a scar from the trauma. They played cautiously, their laughter rare and subdued, eyes darting to their mother for approval, learning early the fragility of security in a world where Christmas brought not gifts but devastation. The rebuilt house, smaller and stark, with its functional rooms and unadorned walls, became a fortress against phantoms, but no locks could bar the ghosts of memory. Among the enslaved community, the fire's tale circulated in whispers around flickering cabin fires, a folklore of resistance and retribution that carried spiritual undertones of exodus and divine vengeance. They dared not speak openly, lest Hargrove or Dalton overhear and unleash the whip's wrath, but in the quarter's dim glow, stories unfolded like sacred scrolls. Ruth emerged as a mythic figure, a modern Miriam leading a silent rebellion, her act of arson a burning bush that illuminated slavery's abominations. Some hailed her as righteous, arguing Hargrove deserved his losses. His grand house reduced to ash mirrored the irreplaceable theft of Lily, a tit-for-tat justice echoing an eye for an eye from Leviticus. He reaped what he sowed, they'd murmur, invoking Galatians' harvest of corruption from fleshly deeds. Others fretted it was folly, worsening chains for all, more patrols, harsher rations, the overseer's gaze sharper. Yet consensus held, Ruth chose agency in a choiceless world, defying the Pharaoh by toppling his palace, her flames a signal fire for freedom's distant dawn. These narratives sustained them, spiritual sustenance amid drudgery, psalms of hope passed orally like the Israelite songs in bondage. Samuel, Ruth's steadfast anchor, transformed into a hollowed shell after her sale, his quiet strength eroded by grief's relentless tide. He toiled in the tobacco barns as before, the air thick with the pungent scent of drying leaves that clung to his skin like persistent sin, but his spirit withdrew. No more did he carve whimsical toys from wood scraps, his knife idle, creativity quenched like the fire's aftermath. Songs that once lifted evenings fell silent, he isolated himself, a solitary figure amid the communal hum, rebuffing inquiries with a gaze that pierced like unspoken reproach. When the Civil War erupted in spring 1861, cannon thunder rumbling from afar like God's approaching judgment, younger men fled toward Union lines, dreams of liberty fueling their flight. 2 succeeded, vanishing into northern promises, 3 were recaptured, their backs lashed as warning. Samuel remained, expressionless, hands mechanically stripping leaves, hanging them in the barn's shadowy rafters, his endurance a stoic psalm of waiting, perhaps for divine intervention rather than mortal escape. By 1863, Overseer Cyrus Dalton, brute enforcer with his scarred visage and coiled whip, was conscripted into Confederate gray, meeting his end at Gettysburg's bloody fields, a fitting demise amid the war's carnage, as if Providence removed the taskmaster like Egypt's overseers in the plagues. Hargrove attempted solo management, but chaos ensued, crops withered in consecutive failures, soil rebelling against the sower's sins, yielding sparse harvests that mocked his ledgers. Enslaved workers, sensing the winds of change whipping through the Confederacy, grew bolder, some ceasing labor outright, daring reprisal in passive defiance, their eyes gleaming with the spark of impending jubilee. By war's end in 1865, the estate lay in tatters, fields overrun with brambles like overgrown thorns of judgment, barns sagging under neglect, the new house weathered prematurely, its paint peeling like shedding illusions. Emancipation's proclamation rippled through North Carolina like manna from heaven, freeing souls long bound. Samuel departed first, on a balmy May morning, sun gilding the horizon in golden promise. He carried naught but his threadbare clothes and the wooden rabbit unearthed from beneath cabin floorboards, a talisman of lost innocence, its smooth contours evoking Lily's laughter. Northward he trudged, roads dusty underfoot, no map save the pull of hope, fleeing the cursed ground like Lot escaping Sodom. His search for Lily consumed him, querying strangers in Virginia's towns about a light-skinned girl, 8 by then, sold in Richmond 58.
But war's flames had devoured records, auction houses razed, traitors slain or dispersed, trails vanished like smoke.
He settled in a quaint southern Virginia hamlet, plying carpentry with skilled hands that once carved joys, building homes for others while his heart remained roofless. Unmarried, childless, he kept the rabbit on a shelf, a silent sentinel. Nights, he'd cradle it, memories flooding like Noah's deluge, tears unspoken prayers for reunion in eternity. Death claimed him in 1891 at 63, buried unmarked in a rural cemetery, his story etched not in stone but in the spiritual ledger of the oppressed. Edmund Hargrove clung to the estate until 1871, aged beyond his 47 years, gray-haired and trembling, a cough racking his frame, smoke's lingering curse, the doctor opined, though over a decade passed. Spring brought his end, a heart failure in the study, slumped over ledgers, pen in hand as if tallying final debts. Buried in the family plot beside patriarchal ghosts, his legacy crumbled. Caroline and Sons fled to Charleston, she perished in 1875, haunted to the grave. William clerked in shipping, solitary, James vanished westward, records silent as forgotten sins. The land fragmented, sold piecemeal, the new house demolished in 1885, foundations swallowed by underbrush. By 1900, only the cemetery endured, crosses weathered like fading repentance, amid ruins hidden in foliage, a physical echo of buried atrocities. Yet history's specters stirred. In 1923, Robert Vance, World War I veteran from Pennsylvania, acquired 50 acres including the grove limping from Argonne shrapnel, seeking solitude in cheap southern soil. He built a modest abode by the creek, 2 rooms, stone fireplace crackling warmly, porch overlooking vegetable plots and clucking hens. Initial peace reigned, he tilled earth, marketed produce, eschewing church and chatter, content in isolation. Summer 1924 disrupted tranquility, nocturnal smoke scents assailed him, not cozy wood, but acrid, like charring cloth or tar, evoking war's horrors. Checks revealed nothing, the odor dissipated like elusive guilt. Then footsteps paced the porch, deliberate, unseen, sending him rushing into night's void. Faint singing followed, a woman's mournful melody, words indistinct, perhaps ancestral tongues or distorted English, carrying sorrow's weight. Vance rationalized war's phantoms, mind's deceptions, but persistence unnerved. Fall prompted a new well, 30 yards from home, atop presumed house ruins. Digging unearthed an iron box, rusted and locked, at 4 feet. Hammering open, he found ledgers, yellowed, brittle, chronicling enslaved transactions, names, ages, descriptions, prices. Jacob, 28, strong, $800, Sarah, 19, house-trained, $600, Moses, 35, carpenter, $900. Lives commodified, sins documented. Then, Lily, born March 12, 1857, light-skinned, sold December 25, 1858, $200. Below, penciled addendum, he took my child. I took his house. We are even now. Vance comprehended, smoke, steps, song, Ruth's unrest, a spiritual haunting demanding acknowledgement. He burned the ledgers in his hearth, pages ashing like purged confessions, but disturbances endured. By spring 1925, Vance fled north, selling the land. Silence shrouded his tale until 1954, aged 73 in a Harrisburg veteran's home, confiding to a reporter, "No ghosts for me, but that land was wrong. War's echo, perhaps. Couldn't stay." History resurfaced in 1968. Margaret Colby, 24, Duke graduate student, unearthed the fire in Randolph Courthouse archives, a terse 1859 inquiry sparking curiosity. Deeper dives yielded reports, deeds, censuses. In a misfiled basement box, a letter, January 15, 1859, from Reverend Thomas Whitley to Hargrove. Heavy heart. Ruth came, he took my child. I took his house. We are even now. I fear, Mr. Hargrove, you are not even. The words hung like a prophetic warning, underscoring slavery's unpaid debts, spiritual imbalances echoing through time, demanding reckoning. Ruth's legacy, not evenness, but eternal reminder that divine justice, though delayed, burns inexorably, illuminating paths to redemption amid ashes. The letter from Reverend Thomas Whitley arrived like a quiet thunderclap in the dead of winter, January 15, 1859, its careful script on yellowed paper bearing the gravity of a prophet's warning. Addressed to Edmund Hargrove in his rebuilt study, where the scent of fresh lumber and varnish could not mask the lingering char of memory, the Reverend's words cut deeper than any overseer's whip. "I fear that what you have sown, you will reap in ways you cannot yet imagine," he wrote, his ink steady despite the heaviness of heart. "I urge you to seek forgiveness not from me but from the Lord and to make amends where you can." Signed, your servant in Christ. The missive closed with a final, chilling admonition, "I fear, Mr. Hargrove, that you are not even." It was no mere pastoral counsel, it was a spiritual indictment, echoing the biblical harvest of Galatians: sow to the flesh, reap corruption; sow to the spirit, reap life everlasting. Hargrove, ever the ledger keeper, filed it away, perhaps hoping the words would yellow and fade like the paper itself. But divine reckonings, like fires in dry tinder, do not extinguish so easily. Margaret Colby, a determined 24-year-old graduate student at Duke University in 1968, unearthed this buried epistle amid the dust-choked basement boxes of the Randolph County Courthouse. Amid misfiled deeds and faded tax rolls, the letter surfaced like a voice from the grave, its contents igniting her pursuit. Her thesis, Fractured Families: The Impact of Child Sales on Enslaved Communities in North Carolina, 1820 to 1865, meticulously argued the profound, generational wounds inflicted by such transactions: mothers torn from infants, siblings scattered like chaff, families erased from ledgers as if they had never breathed. Colby's work was rigorous, drawing on scattered records to reconstruct lives commodified and discarded. Yet academia's doors closed early. Marriage called her away in 1970, her degree unfinished, the thesis consigned to the quiet shelves of the North Carolina State University Library archives, where it slumbered for decades, a seed waiting for fertile ground. That ground arrived in 2003 with Dr. Alan Pritchard, a 50-something Virginia College professor whose life's work chronicled enslaved resistance, the quiet acts of sabotage, the whispered escapes, the bold uprisings that chipped at slavery's monolith. Pritchard's eyes widened at Whitley's words, the Reverend's fear of unrepented sin resonating with his own quest for truth amid erasure. For 2 years, he became a pilgrim through fragmented archives, property deeds yellowed with age, tax lists naming souls as taxable assets, family Bibles with marginal notes of births and deaths. He traced Ruth's sale southward to South Carolina, but records vanished, consumed by war's chaos, lost to time's indifference, or never kept at all. Yet in living memory, he found echoes. Descendants of Harroves enslaved, their great-great-grandparents' stories passed like sacred torches, spoke of Ruth not as criminal but as avenger. Among them was Evelyn Morris, 91, sharp-eyed and steady-voiced in her Greensboro nursing homeroom, sunlight slanting through the window like grace upon her folded hands. "My great-great-grandmother's name was Dinah," she said, her tone carrying the cadence of oral tradition. "She was Ruth's mother. Died when Ruth was young. But before she passed, Dinah made Ruth promise, no matter what, never let them break you. Never let them take everything." Evelyn paused, gazing at the parking lot beyond as if seeing fields instead. "When they took Lily, Ruth kept that promise. She didn't let them take everything. She took something back." Pritchard pressed gently, "What became of Ruth after Charleston?" "She died," Evelyn replied softly. "In South Carolina. Before the war ended, I think. But she sent a message back, through folks traveling between plantations. Simple words: tell Samuel I kept my promise." The promise, to remain unbroken, to reclaim dignity in the face of theft, was Ruth's final testament, a spiritual victory amid physical defeat. Pritchard's 2005 journal article, Resistance and Retribution, The Harrove Estate Fire of 1858, published in the Journal of Southern History, brought academic scrutiny. It detailed the Christmas sale, the arson, the buried message in the ledger: "He took my child. I took his house. We are even now," and the Reverend's letter as evidence of intent and moral reckoning. Citations followed in scholarly works, but the story remained confined to ivory towers until 2017, when filmmaker Jessica Hang, a 30-something New Yorker hungry for untold tales of defiance, discovered Pritchard's piece. Hours of phone conversations followed, the professors sharing archives, interviews, the weight of Evelyn's words. Hang envisioned a documentary that challenged sanitized narratives of slavery, resistance not as passive endurance but as fiery reclamation. In spring 2017, Hang and Pritchard journeyed to Randolph County, the land now a working tobacco farm under Dale Hutchkins, a third-generation owner in his 60s. With quiet respect, Hutchkins granted access. Armed with ground-penetrating radar and a UNC archaeology team, they surveyed the pine-shaded grove where the main house once stood. 2 weeks of methodical probing revealed blackened, cracked brick foundations, silent witnesses to the inferno. Deeper still, beneath the study's vanished floor, a stone-lined pit, remnants of burned ledgers, pages fragile as ash, ink faded but legible in places, names, ages, prices, the cold arithmetic of human lives. Among the fragments lay the impossible, a small wooden rabbit, 3 inches long, carved from a single piece of oak. Long ears, rounded body, delicate tail, Samuel's loving handiwork for Lily, the toy that once danced across a cabin table amid laughter. Hang cradled it, turning it in her palms, the wood warm as memory. "This is Samuel's carving," she whispered to Pritchard. "The one for Lily." How had it arrived here? Samuel had carried it north after emancipation. The implication struck like revelation. Ruth must have reclaimed it, perhaps in the chaos of her final hours on the estate, before sale. She had planned the fire, not mere rage, but ritual destruction. Into the study she went, torch in blistered hand, igniting ledgers that tallied souls like cattle. Flames consumed documentation of separations, sales, stolen childhoods, a symbolic erasure of the system's paper chains. The rabbit, placed beneath, was her marker, a message to the ages: this is for Lily. This is for all of us. You cannot erase us. We were here. We mattered. Pritchard later reflected in the film, Ruth knew she couldn't save her daughter, couldn't undo the theft. But she could deny Hargrove his records, his illusion of control over lives. She took that away. The carving says, "We existed. Our love endured. Your sin is marked." Hang's documentary, The Fire That Ruth Set, premiered at Tribeca in 2018, winning Best Documentary Feature. Streaming millions later, it ignited debates: Ruth as hero, striking against an evil empire, or desperate woman, her act compounding tragedy? Historians parsed evidence: the ledger note, the reverend's letter, the rabbit's improbable presence, some questioning coincidence, others seeing deliberate symbolism. Consensus emerged: Ruth chose. On Christmas night 1858, denied her child, she denied Hargrove his empire of paper and pride. The site now lies quiet, pines whispering over hidden foundations, earth slowly reclaiming scars. In 2019, the County Historical Society erected a granite marker near the road, 3 feet tall, bronze plaque reading, site of the Hargrove estate, established 1791, destroyed by fire December 25, 1858. A place of labor, loss, and resistance. In memory of Ruth, Lily, Samuel, and all whose names were lost. Hutchkins welcomes respectful visitors, some leave flowers, others small wooden carvings, rabbits, birds, horses, tributes to stolen children. The rabbit resides in the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh, glass-cased beside ledger fragments and Whitley's letter. The exhibit, Resistance and Remembrance, the Hargrove Estate Fire, draws quiet crowds, faces reflecting on flames that burned brighter than vengeance. Ruth's grave remains unknown, no marker, no record after South Carolina. Perhaps she perished in war's tumult, records crumbling like ash. Perhaps she survived, nameless in Reconstruction's chaos. Lily's trail ends in Richmond's lost ledgers, Trent's wagon vanishing northward. Theories linger: house servant in Richmond, resold south, lost to disease young. DNA searches by descendants yield no conclusive thread. Yet in spiritual terms, their legacy endures, a refusal of erasure. Edmund's grave, in the overgrown family plot a mile distant, tilts amid weeds, headstone weathered. Descendants scatter, some express regret, donating documents, others silence. In 2020, Patricia Hargrove Chan's op-ed acknowledged ancestral sin, supporting reparations. "I can't undo what Edmund did, but I can say it was wrong." Debate followed, praise for honesty, criticism for words without deeds, but conversation persists, a slow burn toward accountability. Every Christmas, a small gathering at the marker, descendants, historians, activists. Words spoken, a song lifted, silence observed. Flowers and carvings placed. Remembrance, not revenge, but refusal to forget. Ruth sought not legal justice, unattainable in her world, but eternal witness. She existed, Lily mattered, their bond unbreakable. Ruth could not save her daughter, free herself, dismantle the machine. But she could ignite a fire, one that consumed illusions, scorched consciences, and still flickers in memory's hearth. In its light, we see slavery's abyss, the greatest cruelty not whips or chains, but the severing of sacred ties for silver. Yet in Ruth's act, we glimpse resilience's blaze, divine justice delayed, perhaps, but unquenched. The fire she set burns on, a beacon through centuries, reminding, no ledger can tally the soul, no grave silence the truth. What of this tale? Was Ruth's fire justice, retribution in a world denying it? Or tragedy heaped upon tragedy? Hero or desperate soul? Share your thoughts below, I'd love to hear. If these dark histories stir you, subscribe, ring the bell, share with those who seek buried truths. More await in the shadows. Until next time.